Hi there, traders. This is Brad Gilbert with the FX Market Insight for the 22nd of November. All right, as we come into or coming closer towards Thanksgiving, you can see the markets themselves, the major currency pairs, have really defused their current momentum. Okay, some of them have sort of thrashed about. Most are retreating back to where they were a few days ago, and that's pretty much reflected. Not really bounce. There was the equity markets were up, but they have sort of turned out pretty flat. But you can look across the major pairs here, and they are sort of back in the middle of the range. Some of them, when I say they're sideways, it basically means they could go anywhere. It doesn't mean they just trade sideways, but they're back in the range. Now, you'll also notice I've just adjusted my charts just back to having six majors. I had 8 on these pages. I couldn't see enough detail for my liking on these pairs, so I've just actually recalibrated my charts. I've got dollar yen and dollar CAD on the far right, so I can actually see if those two pairs are correlating, and the Aussie, Kiwi, Euro and Sterling all on the next to each other. And that allows me to basically have the US dollar and dollar China, two of the big focus points at the moment, on my next screen. So as you can see, the good thing is you can see a bit more data. The US dollar, it's been sort of cruising slowly to the top side, had a couple of surges, it's been belted a couple of times, but pretty much right at this point, trading sideways. And that's pretty much the same for the offshore yuan, dollar yuan as well. It's just sort of sitting there at the moment, minding its own business. So I'm sure there's plenty to do with Trump and Xi Jinping getting together. Two big egos. I don't know how that's going to turn out, but we may see more tariffs, we may not. Now, this is the equity markets. As you can see, a bit of stabilisation. I mean, equities were off about 4% or close to it over the last couple of days. So up for the Nasdaq to be up 0.75, I wouldn't be sort of saying it's all over. But what we are seeing is basically traders or fund managers just sort of squaring up ahead of the big weekend. All right, now, if I bring over the, actually, let me just give you a look at the major news. I mean, if you have a look in the news-wise, this is where you've got to sort of really decipher what's going through on the news-wise, because if nothing's happening, they regurgitate the same crap. Now, dollar weakens as risk appetite turns higher. Well, I tell you what, the dollar's come off like 10 pips. This is where it's a little bit idiotic having these sort of headlines. Dollar CAD strengthens as oil prices and stocks rebound. Yeah, oil's bounced back like 0.5 cent. I mean, and there's just, the markets are just whipping about. And this is where Brexit comes into play. Obviously, Sterling and the media outlets themselves, they need to produce news for you to read it. So they keep bringing out all this crap about Brexit. No deal, yes deal, no deal, yes deal, all this sort of stuff. And then they did really enjoy the equity markets moving around, gives them something to write about as well. And I think this is where we're going to come back down to after the Thanksgiving break. Hopefully we'll see something more out of the US and China with regards to those trade balances. I see US Treasury here saying China has failed to alter unfair, unreasonable trade practices. I can't see that changing anytime soon. So we'll see how that plays out. Now, if I just bring it back to the main screens here. Now, just actually, let me just get you across. If you just have a look here at the upcoming data, pretty much for the next couple of days, it's all euro. Okay, we've got some consumer confidence numbers. We do have the ECB meeting minutes coming out today as well. And then tomorrow we've got German GDP and some Eurozone PMI data there as well. So if you are trading, you want to start switching your attention over to the euro, because that's where the action is going to be. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean the euro against the dollar, but euro in general. So the euro crosses and the euro against the dollar, they will be the main pairs. Now, just understand, liquidity will be a lot less. Most of the global market will be on holidays, not just the US. So liquidity will be a little bit scarce. So to me, next couple of days, focus very closely on euro and see how that plays out. Obviously, Friday, we do have Canadian CPI data. But I tell you what, most traders will not be at work on Friday. If anything, it'll be a skeleton staff, and that generally means the junior traders. So anything can happen. If there's something wild, you could see some definite moves. Now, just on the major currency pairs, and this is probably a good time to take a bit of a break over Thanksgiving, is, most of the pairs here, or all of them, as far as I'm concerned, have been completely defused. The way the dollar whipped up, or the equity markets were getting hit, back to neutral, et cetera, we've seen a lot of these pairs go from sort of mildly bullish to bearish to flat, square, all over the place. At the moment, they are, to me, all trading sideways. But that doesn't really change things too much. This is the pair I'll be focusing on because that's where that economic data can come into play and really influence the market. And that's where traders will be looking at, in particular in Europe. We'll be focusing very closely on the euro itself. Of course, Brexit is sitting there. You'd expect a couple of loose headlines out there. So sterling could move all over the place. But euro against the dollar, to me, is probably, we don't necessarily have good direction, but we do have, if I just bring you back over to the charts, we do have, some levels to work with. Okay, so when you're looking at the euro itself, this is one of the reasons why I've widened out my charts. You can have a look here. It's got pretty good technical structure. Okay, there's what we're missing. See how it comes up. And this is what a lot of traders are always asking me, saying, well, I can see the trend line here, for instance, down around 113.80. But how do I know if it's going to go down or not? What we need is the fundamental drivers to either push it down or push it up or just keep it going sideways. And that's where the economic data comes into play. So we do have some levels here. The market is not confident enough to push this thing lower or even take it higher. So for me, until we get some of this European data or some variance in that, I think we're just going to trade sideways through this trend line. And that's pretty much where we are, guys. It's not a lot to be reporting, and I don't want to do what the news outlets do, and that's create, news for the sake of it. There's not much happening just at the moment, so maybe a good time to take a day off if you've got better things to do. All right, guys, that's it from me. I'll see you in the 247 trade zone. All the very best. Cheerio.